How to get into a morning routine. I do it for a few days and I fall back into old habits. My work schedule changes a lot as well. We'll be diving into this and so much more in today's Q&A episode. So this is from anonymous member 334. Morning routines. They are a hot topic, I guess you could say right now. I think they're just kind of a hot topic because they're trendy to post on social media. Everybody's posting their routines, and I've posted my routines over the years, and I think it's just a fun thing to do. But when it comes to implementing some sort of morning routine, if you're noticing you're doing it for a few days and then you're falling back into your old habits, I would be curious to see what you're actually trying to do, because I would bet you're likely trying to change your entire life in a day, and you're trying to change way too many variables all at once.
Yep.
So it's not sticking. You're just throwing everything at the wall and nothing is sticking because it's just too much too soon. Something that we focus on with our clients and just advice giving to our app members is you want to just make it so stupid easy that it feels completely doable. It almost feels too easy, and it almost feels like, do I even want to bother with this? Because it doesn't feel like big enough of a change. And once you get consistent with that one easy thing, you continue to add things or take away things depending on what you're doing. And before you know it, over time, your entire routine has shifted, rather than just copying someone's influencer 5 a.m. morning routine, changing a million things at once that you just are not used to. And then it works for a couple of days and you're like, I cannot keep up with this just because it's too much. So that's my take. Joelle, maybe you have another thought here.
Yeah, I was going to echo something similar of just how much of, first and foremost, if you are falling back into old habits, that routine is not sustainable for you, whatever that is. So maybe it's too many things at once, like Alessandra said. Maybe it's also this copying effect of well, I like how that person looks and I like how that person lives their life, so I'm going to try and copy that person's routine. That doesn't necessarily mean that person's morning routine works for your current season of life, or your life at all. So I agree. I would very much bring it down to what's one thing that you like about that routine. Start with implementing that routine. It doesn't need to be waking up early and the mile walk in the morning and the gratitude journal and the cold plunge. Pick one thing that resonates with you, that you're not necessarily trying to copy from someone else to get the results someone else has. What is one of those things that makes you feel good? That one habit that you could implement that is unfailable for you, because it's just that easy.
All that said, I know you mentioned a few days and then you fall back into those old habits. It's going to take more than a few days to get into the new habit. So there does have to be a certain level of commitment from yourself. So to incorporate what Joelle and Alessandra were just talking about, yes, it does need to fit. It can't just be someone else is doing it and I want to do it too, unless you think this is truly going to add value to my life. It's not, I'm doing this because I want the six pack and this person looks great and I want to do those things. This thing resonates with me and I want to do it. Now we're committing to that. And it's going to be one or two things. Once we get those things down, then it's another one or two things. So look at it from both sides. One, does this fit? Is this truly adding value? And two, have you actually committed to doing this? And I understand the work schedule changes. So maybe it's not a time-based, I'm going to do this at 5 a.m. Maybe it's I'm going to do this during the day, or if there's always a uniform time where I can do this thing that does work, take all those into consideration. So it's just to go back to the point I want to hammer home. It's been a few days. We have to drive through those first few days until it truly becomes a habit. Then it becomes automatic. Yeah.
Kendra asked us, she said, first, love your community and vision here, longtime member, client, and fan. I love the 3-day split, and I have mostly used the Move program. I started running again, yay, and tried the hybrid program, but I'm not consistent with 4-day strength plus 3 days running. I really like an upper-lower split, though. What am I missing if I do 2 upper body days and 1 lower body day of the hybrid each week, or other thoughts on an upper-lower split that's only 3 days per week? Josh, you're the hybrid guy, but my initial thought here is that it's fine if you just do both the upper body days of hybrid, pick one of the lower body days, just make sure you stick with that same lower body day. Don't do the first lower body day one week and then switch to the other one the next week. Like you want to keep that consistent across the month. But that's a completely feasible option in my opinion, unless Josh, you might have something else.
Yeah, I mean, the consideration is just that it's less lower body volume. So if that's a focus, you want to improve quads, glutes, hammies, whatever, calves, you're not getting that volume. I don't hate it. I don't love it. I would say be a better idea to stick with a program that's been balanced, like specifically for 3 days. One, I mean, this is kind of funky, but one way you could kind of play with it is kind of take some exercises from one of the days you're not doing and plug them in on a day that you are. So maybe that second upper day, maybe you, for example, you can do this however you want, but maybe you take out the arm workouts, the arm exercises, you do chest, back, shoulders, take out bis and tris, add a couple leg movements, and then that kind of rebalances it to a point. I would say this is probably something we can evaluate on our end in the future. But as far as the way it stands right now, I personally would modify that second upper body day to include some lower body something.
We don't currently have a 3-day week split, right?
We do, but is that anywhere?
Move is 3 days.
Move is 3?
It's
And
three full.
three
It's
full body
three full
days?
body. We don't have an upper lower full or like
Like a
whatever.
push pull legs. Okay.
Yeah. Yep. We have 3 full body, which is fine. But I mean, it also depends,
Yeah.
Kendra. Like, are you in a season where running is the priority? Because it kind of sounds like that. And if so, it's totally okay to not have that extra lower body day. But if you're like just trying to balance all of the things, like I agree with Josh too, what he said, it's not wrong. So it kind of depends on what season of training you're in as well. Like if you're doing a lot of running this summer and you really want to focus on that and mileage is going up across those 3 run days, then maybe that's fine for right now. So it depends on what season of training you're into. All right, anonymous member 725. I've had inner thigh fat forever. Any way to get rid of it outside of diet and overall fat loss?
No.
Negative, Ghost Rider. I wish there was a way to give you guys some hack here, but it truly comes down. No, we can't spot reduce fat. We can't choose where we lose body fat from. Some people are more prone to losing it in certain areas first compared to other people. So it kind of depends on your genetics when it comes to that. But overall nutrition and overall fat loss is going to be the name of the game. Danielle said, what's the difference between progressive overload and hypertrophy? I want to gain muscle, but I'm also trying to lose fat. Should I be focused on one or the other? I'm confused.
Great
I feel like
question.
this might be a common confusion point that we haven't we haven't think about.
We haven't
think about
We
it.
haven't thought about. You would think I'd be on
Gotta
my
do
game
some
today.
more
I got
thinking.
good sleep last night, but I'm not. I haven't thought about this. So go ahead, Joelle, take it away.
Yeah, I could start with this. So, hypertrophy is simply the act of increasing a muscle size. So if your main goal is to run a marathon, your goal is not necessarily hypertrophy. But it might still be progressive overload in your runs, because progressive overload isn't necessarily just for strength training. You'd also want progressive overload in a run. So hypertrophy is just the act of a muscle getting bigger. So when you hear people say like, oh, it's a hypertrophy program, it means that the program is designed around trying to gain size of a muscle, grow the muscle. Progressive overload, and this is something that I think people get wrong a lot. Progressive overload, a lot of people think that progressive overload is the method. Like, oh, you have to train with progressive overload, or you have to use progressive overload. Progressive overload is actually the byproduct. It's the result of you increasing weight, increasing reps, increasing load, increasing range of motion, and being strong enough to adapt to the stimulus for a higher load next time. So for instance, if I could do 5 pounds of lateral raises last week, and 2 months later, I can do 10 pounds of lateral raises, dumbbell lateral raises. I have achieved progressive overload. So that's kind of difference there. Now, is it possible that if I'm following, or rather if I'm achieving progressive overload, I'm also achieving hypertrophy? Yeah, most likely. There's probably going to be some overlap there. But when you hear people talk about, okay, we want you to increase the reps or try to get stronger in some capacity, like the different ways that we can achieve progressive overload might be increasing the weight, increasing the reps, increasing range of motion, lengthening tempo. Those are all different ways to achieve progressive overload. Some of those might result in hypertrophy, but I would say not always. You need progressive overload to achieve hypertrophy, I would say, but you don't. Yeah, I was like, does that work if it's backwards? Am I making sense?
What I was thinking, yeah.
I was like, but you don't need hypertrophy to have progressive overload. But like, yeah, you kind of do. So anyway, you can kind of have one without the other, but you are talking about two different things. But in a sense, both are an outcome. Progressive overload is an outcome of you adapting, your body adapting to a stimulus and then being able to do more. A lot of times that progressive overload results in hypertrophy, but they're not the same, but they are both outcomes. I will leave it at that.
Hit that perfectly, and I'll answer the second part of that. So if you want to gain muscle, but you're also trying to lose fat, I would say that if you are relatively lean or like fat loss isn't something that needs to happen right now, you're going to notice an improvement in body composition through this quote unquote gaintaining phase we've talked about a few times on recent podcasts. So you can basically stay at relative maintenance calories and focus on progressive overload, getting stronger, crushing it in the gym. And as you build muscle and maintain current fat levels, you're actually improving body composition. That's just happening just by the math. If you have excess fat to lose, that could become the priority, and then you circle back to gaining muscle. It's not going to be nearly as efficient, but you can still potentially build some muscle while you're losing fat. It's just much more efficient focusing on one versus the other. But that is possible, especially if there are some relatively higher fat levels to begin with. But if you're on the fence, I would lean towards a longer-term gaintain. Focus on killing it in the gym. Focus on cleaning up the diet, prioritizing whole foods, minimizing the ultra-processed stuff, and you're going to be very happy with the body composition improvements. That is one of the most underrated phases you can go through if you do it the right way. Hey guys, real quick. If you've been listening and thinking, I need to start doing something for my health, but I don't have time for a full program, that is literally why we built the SDE Method app. It's a fitness app made for real people with real lives. Busy parents, working professionals, anyone juggling 100 things. You can get a smart, effective workout in around 30 minutes, some even closer to 20 minutes, and log out knowing you made progress. You can finally take the guessing out of your workouts. We have workouts designed to be done at the gym or at home, and you get access to all of them when you sign up. As life phases change, you can pick a new one that aligns better with what you have going on right now. And one more thing, we are also qualified for HSA FSA reimbursement. So just hit the app link in the show notes, start where you are, we'll help with the rest. All right, let's get back to the show.
Jeannie asked us, she said, I've been training at a functional fitness gym, taking group classes for several years. However, my work schedule is changing in the next few months, which is going to make it impossible for me to keep going to that gym. My plan is to join a regular old gym and begin using one of the SDE Method app programs for strength training. As somebody who has not been to a regular gym and used machines in a very long time, she's mostly been using barbells, dumbbells, kettlebells. What are your suggestions to help me navigate this switch? Thanks. Step 1, take the quiz. So if you take the quiz it's linked in our SDE Method app, Instagram. I'm not sure if we have it anywhere else. Is it on the website? I don't even know if it's on the website.
I don't think it's on the website.
Well, it's in the SDE Method app Instagram, link in bio, or I'll post it in the group after, Jeannie. Take that, and you can literally select if you want to keep training with just barbells, dumbbells, and kettlebells at this new gym. Most of our programs can accommodate that. If you want to include the machines, Physique and Muscle Mommy are really the two programs that are like full gym style that include machines. It doesn't have to be that way if you don't like machines, but my advice would be to take the quiz to make sure you're paired with the program that really just excites you and makes sense for what you have available.
Preach.
Jordan said, my 9-month-old is going through a pretty gnarly stage of separation anxiety. Have any of your babies been through this phase, Joelle? And how did you keep up with all things strength training, walking, cardio, etc.? For context, I'm also home solo most of the time because military life, also no family close I could pass her off to for a little bit. A pack and play, a baby jail. I feel like anytime she's restrained, she's angry like the Hulk. Should I just try to spread workouts out and do whatever I can at any time throughout the day, even if that means I'm not finishing it in one sitting? It was Reese. That was your stage 5 clinger, right?
She still is. We've been in this phase, Jordan, for 2 years. So my advice is
to let you know when she figures it out.
My advice is I have no friggin' clue. No. Quite frankly, you might not like my advice. My recommendation is do it before the baby wakes up, because if you saw my Peloton video the other day, like I'm literally holding my 2-year-old's hand while I am riding the Peloton because she is a stage 5 clinger. So for me, the only guaranteed way for me to have an uninterrupted workout is to do it before the kids wake up. So that is my personal solution and probably my top recommendation. I do think that, and Alessandra, you could probably speak to this a little bit more, of like your kids probably see you work out a whole lot more than like my kids see me work out, because I'm usually doing it again while they're asleep. And you sometimes as well, but a lot of times like Kai or Cora might be in the garage with you while you're lifting. How do you handle those situations? Like, is it something they've just gotten used to with time? Is it like, hey, mommy's exercising right now, you got to go play, like, and they know that that's independent time? Jordan, I know you only have a 9-month-old, so like that will take some time and practice, but you could probably speak better to that, Alessandra, about like how you handle it if your kids are in the gym with you.
Yeah, I mean, both Kai and Cora have been in the gym with us since a pretty early age. I think Cora more so than Kai, just because when you have one kid, it's easier to switch off with the other parent, especially with both Josh and I home. So we kind of would choose to work out solo a lot when he was very, very little. But Cora, I mean, she's been in the gym with me since birth. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it really comes down to it's like exposure therapy. Like the more you do it with them around, the less exciting and less weird it becomes for them. So it just becomes almost part of like their normal routine every day to see mom work out, whether it's in your living room or out in, if you have a garage gym, I'm not sure where you're working out. And at first it's going to be hard because especially if they're mobile, like they'll be crawling all over the place. I tried the baby jail thing with Cora for a little bit. It would work for a few minutes, but ultimately she was just much happier not in that. Like it didn't really save me any time. I would just be back and forth trying to like entertain her. So I am team just like exposure therapy, get them out there with you. Your workouts might take a little bit longer, but at the end of the day, you're still finishing it in a session, even if that session is longer than you planned for. So that's my take.
And even like with Kai and Cora to an extent, they'll go back and forth. So there will be periods when they're playing with toys or something on the side, pushing the stroller around the gym, sitting on his little balance bike, and other times when they're like incorporating themselves into the workout. So it's kind of a back and forth type of deal. Cora more so playing. Kai is now kind of a hybrid of both. Like he'll come out with either of us if the other one's not home or working or whatever the deal is. And he'll just like drive cars on the bench, and then he'll pick up his barbell for a few minutes and then go back to the cars. And it's just how they've grown up.
That is hybrid training right there. But yeah, I mean, it's going to change likely through as they grow and as they go through different stages of being a baby and being a kid. So you just have to learn how to roll with each stage, and done is done. However you make it happen is the most important thing. So hopefully that was helpful. All right. Brooke asked us, we have a few questions here from Brooke. She said, questions based off of your HIIT/Zone 2 podcast episode. Number 1, hypothetically, if you could only get your 3 to 4 lifts in a week, would adding 5 to 10 minutes of HIIT at the end 2 to 3 times per week be as beneficial as doing them on separate days? Do you think recovery would be affected?
I think that would be fine. If that's what works for your schedule and that's when you could squeeze them in, I think it would be fine. And like you said, you're adding 5 to 10 minutes to your workout. I don't think that you're going to see a dip in recovery.
Agree.
As far as optimal, like is there a difference? There is. And ideally, like the ideal scenario is you would like to separate cardio in general from strength training. There's some different pathways, not just specific to like CNS recovery, but as far as like maximizing the workout, especially if we're focusing on body composition, turning on the AMPK pathway with the cardio that's happening right after that lift. So it's not the perfect way, but there's nothing wrong with it. So that's not to scare you, but just to kind of differentiate. Is there a difference? There is. It's probably not very significant if we're talking about 5 to 10 minutes of HIIT, not significant in really at all. But ideally, you said if we can do those on separate days, it is more beneficial to maybe not separate days necessarily, but just separate those by like a meal. If you can eat in between, let your body recover a bit.
I think this is where that like optimal versus practical comes into play. And I know we talk about that a lot. Like, yes, in the research, is it maybe more optimal to have separate sessions? Yes. But if it's, hey, I can only do it this way, or I'm not going to do the HIIT at all, I'd rather you do it that way, because 1000%. That might be more practical for you, even if it's not as optimal like in published literature. So science is great, but it's also not always practical. So we have to kind of extrapolate what we can and make sure that it's practical for our own lives. So if that's how you had to do it, I would say do that. I'd rather you do that than skip it.
We don't live in a lab. Completely agree.
She had a few more
second question,
about that. Yeah.
She said, often if I go for a run 2 to 3 miles, I seem to do a combo of HIIT in zone 2. For example, first mile is zone 2, second mile is more of HIIT. Will this benefit run time for shorter races like a 5K or a 10K? Should these cardio workouts be separate days with a full HIIT day and a full zone 2 day?
It's probably not. You're probably cycling through different zones.
That was my first.
But remember from that last episode, HIIT is like an all-out sprint effort. So unless you're literally transitioning into a sprint and like a very slow walk, you're not actually doing HIIT. You're climbing zones 3, 4, maybe 5 throughout different parts of that run.
Right.
But just very clear to differentiate. We're talking about a max level of exertion for like 30 seconds. So it's probably not a HIIT session.
You wouldn't be able to do like a mile of HIIT and then go run another 2 or 3 miles after, because you would be so wiped from true HIIT. So like Josh and Alessandra said, you're probably kind of, you are probably doing some interval training. That's really what's happening, but not necessarily a high intensity interval training, at least not to the degree that we would see those max effort sprints happening, kind of interspersed with zone 2. So to come back to a question about like, would it benefit run time for shorter races? I think there's a benefit to having that ability to train in an explosive manner. I know Alessandra talked about that a little bit in our last episode. But having that explosive power, like that is really helpful. Think about if you're running a 5K and you have that last, 400 meters, 200 meters, whatever it is, and you want to book it strong finish to, bang out the last 3 people at the end so you could end up in front of them. Being able to have that sprint and that anaerobic capacity is really, really helpful. At the same time, if you were only ever training sprints, that's not going to give you the endurance capacity that you would want for a longer duration race. So that's why, we like to see a mix of the two if we can. So yeah.
And then her third question was just, if you are primarily training in zone 2 for shorter races, what is your zone usually on race day? I don't know. If you are training in zone 2 and you're not doing any sort of speed work, it's going to be kind of like, an experiment, I guess you could say, on race day, because you just don't know. You haven't trained at race pace. If you go into I'm not sure if you're an app member, but I have a race pace calculator thing in our running section of the app. So if you have like an idea of a goal that you want to hit based on whether you're doing a 5K, 10K, whatever, you can go in there and it'll tell you like what your estimated pace should be. And you can kind of compare what your current pace at zone 2 is right now for that. But ideally, you're not racing in zone 2. Like, you're likely pushing it hard on race day. So you can expect it to be faster than your zone 2 pace. Yeah. But again, we want to make sure we're implementing that somewhere at some point in our training. Obviously, as you get closer to that race, it's going to be in there more frequently than if you're months out. But
we're also up to what, 3 or 4 running programs, like actually
we
taking you to the
have
optimal.
So we have the Begin, which is like our couch to 5K program, and it will get you running up to 30 minutes straight. We have Extend, which is the 10K program. So if you're, you can run about 30 minutes right now, you can start there and work up to a 10K distance. We have the half marathon, beginner, and more intermediate programs in there. So I think 4 total programs. I'd love to get a full marathon program in there eventually. We've just been a little busy working on some other stuff.
Having kids.
That too. Well, not on my end, but I'm busy with other stuff, okay?
I swear.
Sarah said, I was following builds 4 times per week and was finding I wasn't hitting my cardio days. I had wrote in a bit back and asked if maybe I should try switching to move in order to make sure I was getting in those cardio days. It has probably been over 4 months now that I made the switch, and I can proudly say I check the boxes: 3 times strength, 3 times cardio. However, I'm starting to notice my body has not been feeling its best. I feel sore and achy all the time, and because of that, I'm not sleeping well. I haven't changed anything else. I still eat a well-balanced diet of protein and plant diversity. I drink my water and electrolytes. I'm wondering if my body just responds better to 4 times per week, and maybe because certain muscle groups get rest while others work versus 3 full body days. Wondering if you have any thoughts as to why I'm not feeling so great with the switch. Let's answer that first. You might just need more food, honestly. That's my first thought.
It could also be that you are optimized with less training days per week. Like I've talked about this a few times. When I switched to Evolve Hybrid, I was used to training at least 5, if not 6 days a week, 60 to 90 minutes a session. And then when I was forced, based on everything we got going on over here, to scale back a bit, and we're talking like for a while, it was 4 days a week, 20 to 30 minute sessions. But even within those, I was responding very, very well. Like strength was going up, body composition was improving. So it's going to be a variation of recovery aspects, different factors involved there. You might just be at a point where the fewer training days and the optimal rest, where you can go more intense on those training days, but you have more time to recover, is just something you work really well with. So you don't necessarily need to force it. You could add in, if you scaled back a resistance day, you could add in an active recovery day, go for a hike, go somewhere with the kids.
No, you listened to this wrong. She's saying she feels better with more lifting with the 4 day per week versus the 3.
She switched.
I'm looking at 4 months and 3 days.
She was doing 4 days, but she was having trouble getting in all the cardio sessions. So she went down to 3 days of lifting, 3 days of cardio.
Now she feels
and she's
worse.
saying now she feels really sore and achy all the time. My first follow-up question would be, how much are we eating? I know she said she eats like a balanced diet and lots of plant and protein. That doesn't necessarily mean you're eating enough. And then there ends up being this downstream effect, because you mentioned you're sore and you're achy. And now because of that, you're not sleeping well, which is going to make you more sore and more achy and worse recovery. So anytime I hear like we're chronically sore, achy, lingering soreness, things like that, that's not really going away right away, I'm always going to come back to food. How much are we eating?
That's a common thought too, you guys. Like, we can be eating all the protein, we can be eating all the fiber, but if you don't know how much of what you're consuming of each of these things throughout the day and you've never tracked before, there's likely a lot of gaps in your diet. And I kind of talked about this on stories last week. Tracking macros long term isn't for everybody, but I do believe everybody would benefit from short periods of tracking, especially in a situation like this where you're starting to notice biofeedback is not doing great. It's going to help you just to make sure you're covering all of your bases as far as nutrition goes. Part 2.
I also don't know.
Before we jump into the next one, at what point would you guys consider getting some labs run, just to get like a baseline or see if anything's off in this type of situation?
If I don't know her nutrition, then I would not suggest that yet. Like, I need to see the
I'm saying at what
picture.
point? At what point?
Nutrition is on point for at least a month or 2. Training we keep it consistent for a month or 2 while nutrition is on point. Monitor biofeedback at that point, and then I would suggest maybe looking into labs if you're still not feeling great.
Yeah.
That's
I'm not ever going to hear sore and achy, and my first reaction is go get labs.
Right.
I mean, let's look at food, let's look at sleep, let's look at whatever data we can find first. And then if we're still in a great place, with food, with eating enough, with recovery, with sleep, and something still doesn't feel right, okay, then maybe it's worth exploring further.
All right, I'm going to have to dip out because Mr. West is not wanting to sleep today. So you guys are
Mr.
going to have to
West.
finish. Well, he slept last night, so I can't really complain, but naps are.
But now he doesn't want a nap. Happens
Yeah,
to the best of
so.
us.
All right, I
There
will
was
catch you guys in the next one.
So
See you
part
later.
2, were you just looking for part 2, Joel?
There was another thing that I wanted to add about this, but I don't remember what it was now, so go ahead.
All right, part 2 is I have IBS. Just always struggle with digestion. I try my very best to drink water and get proper nutrients and fiber. I don't touch anything processed. I struggle with really bad constipation. I just made a gastro appointment mid-May to look into this further, but I'm worried that all they're going to want to do is put me on medication, which is why I have been hesitant to make the appointment in the first place. This is what has happened to me in the past. Very common. I'm very much into the natural approach, and rather than a band-aid, I would like to get to the root of the problem. Love it. At what point is it time to seek medical advice versus maybe a dietitian coach to explore further? That's really personal, as far as like how long this has been happening. It sounds like you have a lot of, things in place, and like you're aware of biofeedback, you're aware of sleep, like you just brought up with the first part of this question, which I love. It might, if you're already hesitant and having anxiety towards reaching out to a traditional practitioner, maybe start off with a coach a la Levolution Coaching. I wouldn't recommend that blanketly, but someone who has an actual expert on their team like we do.
Which we do.
So it's
Yeah.
just us. I'm not recommending anybody else. It's our team. Um,
Yeah.
I would go ahead, Joel.
I was just going to say, I appreciate that she made a gastro appointment. And I also can completely empathize with, like, I'm already dreading it because I already know, like, I'm probably just going to be thrown medication. Because she also gave us some context of her first question. Like, it sounds like she, gets her water. She's eating a lot of nutrients. She has a lot of plants. She has a lot of fiber. She focuses on protein. Like, she's doing on paper, right, all the right things. But then you also mentioned that, like, achiness, not recovering well. And when I hear like digestive issues and then also soreness, recovery not great, there's a little piece of like, ooh, like little light bulb of, are we having absorption issues? Because if we're having digestive issues, sometimes we could be having absorption issues. And if we're having absorption issues, it could be that we are not absorbing some of the vitamins and minerals that we want to be getting from the food that we're eating. And that could be playing into, some of the aches and pains that you have. Again, I'd love to know where calories are at as a whole. But because we kind of have some additional context of that question and this question, I say still go to the gastro appointment. First of all, if someone wants to throw meds at you, like, they can't force you to take them. So they can give you their suggestion. They can write you a prescription. I can't tell you how many times someone's written me a prescription and I don't even go and fill it if it's something that I decide against. But that being said, I think it could be helpful still to go to the gastro appointment. Maybe they'll do a stool test. Maybe they'll want to do some sort of colonoscopy. I would go in and describe your symptoms and see what comes of that. And then depending on how that appointment goes, I would potentially reach out to a dietitian on our team, Coach Kara, Coach Ariana on our team does a lot of work on gut stuff, as well as Coach Courtney. They're both our typical. Kara's an RD. I know. I don't think she does a ton of gut stuff, but Courtney and Ari are two very, very prominent in the gut, autoimmune, IBS, all that realm. So yeah, I would say go take your gastro appointment, see how it goes, and then potentially apply to work with Levolution, and we'll get you set up with one of our coaches.
Yeah, and Sarah, honestly, like I've been down this road as well, which is like I've been in your shoes, and I completely understand the concerns, and I've dealt with them, and I've ended up taking the more holistic approach with outside practitioners, more holistic practitioners, and that the ones that are actually asking the questions and bringing up the different things that Joelle just mentioned, which is something that I have never heard from any of my gastroenterologists, and I've been through a few of them. There was a period where I was having surgery every 6 months over the course of 14 months. There was, something like 14 surgeries, and I've been dealing with this for the last 12 years. I'm in a really good place now, and I do credit a couple of them with helping me get there, but I wouldn't be where I am now without having taken the lifestyle, the diet, the training, the recovery, all of those things that you're getting on top of the more in-depth root cause questions that someone on our team is going to answer. So this isn't me, shilling coaching. You brought up the compare and contrast there. It's my honest feedback, and you're more than welcome to hop on a free, no obligation consult call to see if this is something where you feel like the boxes are checked. Third part, after 2 months on a new multivitamin ritual, I just discovered it may be why my breakouts have been getting increasingly worse. I've always struggled with cystic acne, but I did some research and discovered exceeding the recommended dosage for vitamin D, B12, and biotin can make acne breakouts go bananas, and this multivitamin has levels of all three. With that being said, it has made me think I am already a pretty nutrient-dense dieter.
Eating a pretty nutrient-dense diet.
Oh, I botched it in the middle and I decided to improvise. Do I really need a multivitamin, or is that really better suited for someone who doesn't eat as healthy?
Great question. So anytime we're talking about a supplement, we're talking about supplementing gaps in someone's diet. So a multivitamin can be great for people who do have those gaps. For the average person who is eating a very nutrient dense diet and is actually having downstream negative effects of their multivitamin, I would say ditch your multi and stick with eating the nutrient dense diet that you're already consuming. You likely don't need the multi.
So something I've been a little turned on to recently-ish is, like, I've been off of multivitamins for a long time. That's just $30 we can save and put into something else. But what are your thoughts on I don't know if it's called a multi, but like mineral supplements? So a lot of times if they're coming from mineral deficient soils or foods, even if we're eating whole foods, we can come up a little short in those departments. Have you looked into those at all? Have you thought about those at all?
Years and years ago, there was a company that I was working with that had a multivitamin and a multi-mineral. And I think I took it for a few weeks. I certainly didn't notice any difference. My labs didn't look any different. I would say very similarly, if you're eating a pretty well-rounded, nutrient-dense diet, you're likely getting a lot of those minerals. If you were to get labs drawn or do an HTMA, like a hair tissue mineral analysis, and you were seeing that you were chronically low in specific minerals, then it might be helpful to supplement those. But also, if we're supplementing them and not absorbing them, then it's not actually it is a deficiency issue, but it's not a lack of consumption issue. It's a digestive issue. So yeah, I wouldn't necessarily throw a new supplement at it, but depends on the context.
Listen, if you're tired of the all or nothing cycles, the diet starts Monday, the I know what to do, I'm just not doing it feeling, we should probably talk. Our one-on-one online coaching isn't just about workouts and meal plans. It's about building something that actually fits your life. No cookie cutter templates, no guilt, just real coaching and real results. Plus, we've got a pretty big team, so we can even pair you with an expert who actually understands your lifestyle because they've gone through it too. If that sounds like what you've been missing, check out the link in the show notes to apply for coaching. Then we'll send you the link to book a free, no obligation consult call with our team. There are no hard closes. We won't even take your credit card over the phone. You'll get the details to sign up on your own time. And more good news, we are in fact qualified for HSA FSA reimbursement. One last thing. We even offer a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you have nothing to lose. What are you waiting for? Spots are limited, so apply today. All right, let's get back to the show. All right. Lindsay says, I have a quick question about where it's best to ask questions about the programming. Is it better to post them in here in the Q&A section or make it post in the Facebook group or DM you on Instagram? I posted a couple questions in the group before. It didn't get a response, so I just wanted to make sure I'm reaching out in the right place moving forward. Thanks so much. So guys, that's a good question. And if you've asked a programming question in the Q&A before that we've answered, it's because it's going to benefit the entire group. Now, if it's something that is more individual and you're asking for a replacement or you have a question or recommendation about programming, the first part of that question about the programming is fine, but those are typically going to be answered in the group by the group. So when we're talking about the app, guys, you aren't guaranteed direct access to any coaches. We do try to circulate and jump in. A lot of times there's a bunch of comments, so we do miss some, but that's not a guaranteed portion of the app subscription. So the app is to give you guys hands off, follow on your own programming. And then again, the community has been awesome here in this Facebook group about answering certain things and providing recommendations. And again, we are still in here. The coaches are still jumping in here. So when we see them, we do answer those. But I just wanted to make that very clear differentiation. Now, a request or a recommendation for programming is just something it's just not even appropriate. So if it's a request for a change, we have to understand that when I create a program, Joel creates a program, Alessandra creates a program, it's with a purpose, and the purpose is to cover a specific demographic that fits that equipment style, that many days per week, and is looking for a specific style of training. In no circumstance should anybody be, I don't want to say no, in a friendly, hey, I would love to see more of this. Like, keep in mind that can be taken in a couple of different ways by the person who's writing the program. It's very easy to take that the wrong way. So try to keep that in mind, guys, especially if it's something where we're consistently reaching out, asking why we did this. If you want to learn and we can kind of understand the difference there, that's one thing. But if it gets pointed toward the threshold of, I would really like to see some more of this because I really enjoy this and this would benefit me. Not to say that this is what Lindsay was asking or saying or anything like that. I'm just saying in a general sense, because this has happened in a few different things. That's just not appropriate. Like we're out here trying to put together the best for the general population. If there are things you are looking for that are specific and will really help you, exactly, one-on-one. We love that, but that is something that's going to fall into the one-on-one sphere.
Yeah. And that, like, I see people ask all the time, like, hey, I don't have this piece of equipment. Like, can someone suggest an alternative? Like, we're totally happy to help with that. Or usually the community is really quick to jump in with that stuff. But if you're looking for super specific things in your program or like requests or recommendations for what your programming will look like, then you're probably better suited for one-on-one because, like Josh said, a program that we're creating is for the masses. There are hundreds or thousands of people using those programs. So we can't necessarily adapt them to everyone's preferences. Like the preference is the program that you're choosing. So if you want something more specific, I would say do training only with Levolution, and one of our coaches can write you up a custom program that can be modified and adjusted a million times over, as much as you want, because you're paying for that level of kind of personalization.
For sure. All right. Cecilia asks, the weighted vest training trend, I said training, the weighted vest trend seems to be everywhere. Positives, negatives, walking and jogging. Would running with one be hard on the joints? Would this give an advantage to someone trying to lose weight but not wanting to drop calories too much, a la breastfeeding? And for more context, I am training 6 days and doing at least 1 hour walking a day, 10,000 steps, eating all whole foods, creatine, great sleep, checking all the boxes you guys always chat about. Sounds like you're crushing it, Cecilia.
Yeah, I'm so like kind of neutral on the weighted vest thing. I don't really have strong opinions either way. If you want to add a vest to your walk, great. I think the only thing that worries me a little bit, like I don't love the idea of jogging with it, or at least going from nothing to jogging with like a 30-pound weight vest. Obviously, I don't know how much weight a vest might have. And I know there are ones that you can like kind of modify and change the weight. But I wouldn't want to see someone going from like jogging, obviously with their own body weight, to adding like a 30-pound weight vest off the bat. That's probably not going to be great on your joints. Probably not going to feel great on your knees, your feet, your ankles, because you're all of a sudden adding a lot of weight. But I really don't have strong opinions either way. If you want to try it, you can. If you don't, great. I don't think it's something that everyone needs. I don't think that there is much necessity for it. It's not burning as many extra calories as you think, honestly. And it's probably not having, I think it's probably harder on your joints than, depending on what you're doing, than I would want to see. But like, you want to go hike and wear a weight vest just to like make it a little harder? Sure. I don't really.
Yeah. I think 6 months ago, rucking was the big trend. It's probably fallen back a little bit. But that said, I am not a huge fan of the idea of running again with the joints. I would rather run faster than run heavier, just with longevity in mind. But if you want to switch up, doing a run with going for a little ruck or a little hike, a weighted vest with a hike, Like it's just a different way to elevate your heart rate. So if that's enjoyable to you, it's interesting to you, you hate running and you want to just go for a walk, pop in the headphones and make it a little harder than it otherwise would be, throw on the vest. It's just one more tool that you have in your tool belt. No right or wrong way to do cardio. Just elevate your heart rate for a sustained period of time. This is just one more tool to do that. Lindsay says, I'm currently 8 weeks pregnant and feeling good so far. I am 5'6", weighing in about 270. I know this is not great in regard to optimal health physically and physiologically. I started eating better and getting more walking done on top of building my husband's and I's house ourselves. That is incredible. Before
Wow.
finding out I was pregnant. What are your thoughts for keeping body weight gain low throughout pregnancy as I continue to make better food choices and incorporate more movement? I feel lost and worry about gestational diabetes and pre-eclampsia with this pregnancy.
Preeclampsia. Yep.
Preeclampsia. I have also had 2 prior miscarriages toward the end of last year.
So a few things. One, I'm sorry for your losses. That's really tough. And congratulations on your new pregnancy. I'm glad that you're feeling good so far. So I love that you're starting to eat better. You're starting to get more walking done. You guys are obviously really active with literally building your own house. I have so many questions about this. That's so cool. But when it comes to weight gain, one, I would ask your doctor about this. Typically there are like, I don't necessarily always agree with this, but I'm bringing this up because I think it's relevant in this situation. There are like very generic. That's the word I was thinking of. I was like, it's right there. I'm just off by a letter. I gotta figure out what that word is. There are some generic, like arbitrary weight gain recommendations depending on your starting weight when you do get pregnant. So the recommendations do change depending on someone's starting weight, and the higher someone's like starting weight at pregnancy, the less weight they recommend gaining during pregnancy, if that makes sense. So if you have questions about that, or you want to know like what those numbers are, I don't know them off the top of my head, I would talk to your doctor when you go in. You might not have even had your first appointment yet. It might not be till 12 weeks or so. But when you go in and talk to your doctor, that would be a great question to ask them. I would not be hyper focused on like trying to be in a deficit per se during pregnancy, because we do want that baby growing and we want to make sure baby's getting plenty of nutrients. But focusing on the big picture approach of eating plenty of protein, focusing on fruits and vegetables, staying moving, strength training, walking, going on those walks. Like those are all really, really health enhancing factors that both you and your baby will benefit from. So I think continuing to focus on health enhancing habits is going to be most important here. And I would just kind of reshift your focus from like the weight gain or weight loss aspect to the what can I do for my health that's going to be great for me and baby.
All right. Letitia asks, I know you guys don't hop on the whole cortisol hype, but what are practical tips for lowering cortisol levels, especially when training first thing in the morning? I've noticed on those days I feel more anxious, stressed, and it does not seem like my cortisol is higher. Oh, and it does seem like my cortisol is higher versus days I'm not training early. I eat before, drink tons of water, and practice journaling. You're going to laugh. My first recommendation is a pre-workout cold shower. We're going to get that cortisol. We're going to get that
It's going to
cortisol
raise her
spike.
stress even more.
No, it is. It's gonna spike the cortisol. It's first thing in the morning, which can be positive for keeping it lower throughout. But B, it's also potentially not hard data, but potential improvements in performance with a pre-workout cold shower. And that might just be like adrenaline spike because you just went through this crazy stress response. But as far as getting that up earlier, I would have said training earlier in the day should keep that lower throughout the rest of the day. So that one threw me for a little bit of a loop, a little bit of a curveball there. But I would try just for a week. And if you hate it, don't continue it. It's not for everybody. But being the cold exposure guy, I have noticed a massive difference. And there is a cortisol relationship there where you're going to get that spike with the shower, but that helps to keep it a bit lower throughout the day.
Well, I have another thought that is going to have
Is it
nothing to
related
do
to
with
cold exposure?
It's going to be, hey, don't do cold. No, I won't completely contradict what Josh is saying, but my follow up question / thought does not have to do with cold exposure, as you may have guessed. So I feel like I know what you're talking about here too, Letitia, because I would say I have some sense of this with early morning workouts. And one thing I would say is like, let's make sure we're not training fasted, because I think that that's helpful. But you did mention that you're already eating. I think she mentioned eating before that.
Yep, well hydrated.
Yeah,
And drink
well
and eat.
hydrated eating before you do that training. So here's what I'm thinking, and I'm curious about what the rest of your morning looks like, because I know for me, on the days that I do train in the morning before I get my babies up, the first few hours of the day are a tornado. I am a tornado. Brant literally calls me a hurricane. So anyway, I know, like, if I wake up at 5, for instance, and I come downstairs, I throw two Go-Go's down, applesauce packets down, start getting my hydration in, drive over to the gym, do my hour workout, race home. By then it's 7 o'clock. I literally walk in the door. I get the babies up and ready. I'm doing school drop off. Like somewhere in there, I'm trying to throw down a protein shake and like drop Sloan at school, come back, nanny's here, ready to dive into my workday. Now it's 9 o'clock. So for those 4 hours from 5 to 9, it's just one thing after the next, nonstop, not sitting, just it's chaos. Versus if I were to sleep in till 6:45, get my babies up at 7, get them ready, do school drop off, and start my workday, that morning routine looks entirely different.
That's a great point.
So that's why I'm asking, like, what else does your morning look like? Or is it like, okay, now it's a mad dash. I'm sleeping as late as I can so I could get as much sleep, but then it makes my morning a little bit more crammed, and then I got to rush to get to work, or I rush to get babies up. Like, what else is happening in your morning? Because you're mentioning that on those days you feel more anxious and more stressed, and it seems like, your cortisol is higher on those days versus the days that you're not training. My question is, what else is happening in that morning and in that routine and in that chaos that might also be contributing to that stress? So that's just I don't necessarily think it's like the workout inherently causing the additional stress or cortisol. It's just you've added another hour-long thing to your routine that is a stressor. And I'm not trying to deter you from that. I'm just saying it's just something to consider. Like, I know that my training early days feel like that too, in some sense.
That's a great point. Waking up early to fit that in. But even when you're waking up early enough to fit that in, you're probably just fitting that in because it's so early.
Right.
So now you have to cram in the rest of your morning into a very tight window. So that can definitely induce some anxiety there. And that is something to assess before you necessarily need to jump into the cold shower. But if that is the case, maybe focus on some stress management techniques. So mindful breathing, actually going through a few rounds of box breathing, ending your workout with that, maybe setting a reminder like an hour after that as you're in the thick of things, going throughout that morning routine, whatever you got going on. So definitely something to think about. Yeah, I like how you covered that. Different angle there. Trisha says, thoughts on how to discuss quote unquote skinny or healthy food choices with a 6-year-old. My daughter the other day asked me if she was skinny or if I was skinny and chocolate isn't healthy or candy. Interested to hear your thoughts on how you'd approach food discussions with a child or skinny fat. It says or skinny fat. I'm assuming she heard someone talk about that at school because we do not at home.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was gonna say, is where'd she even hear the term skinny? Like, I think if I said that word to Sloan, she'd be like, what? Granted, she's 3 and not 6. Do you think Kai knows the word skinny? He's almost 6. Do you think he knows that term?
No, if we said it, he wouldn't know what we were talking about.
Yeah, that's how I feel. So yeah, maybe it's something that came from school or a school setting. Maybe it's something a kid said to them. Maybe she heard a teacher say it. I know that Sloan's come home and said things about like sugar or that's not healthy. And I'm like, I don't use that verbiage at home. So I know it was something that came from school. So I think when it comes to skinny and that word specifically, because I think there's 2 different conversations here. One is like skinny and talking about people's bodies, and one is about making healthy food choices. And I think that if I were to, yeah, I got a noodle on this for a minute. I think if I were to approach that conversation, I would kind of keep it as general as possible. Like different people have different bodies, and some bodies are bigger and some bodies are smaller and some bodies are taller and some bodies are shorter and some people have different hair and different eyes. Like we've started to have those conversations. People have different teeth and different eyes and different hair and whatever. And I would probably explain bodies that way. And skinny is just one type of body that people can have. And the food choices conversation, I think, is a different conversation. There are some things, there are foods that give us energy, like carbohydrates. There are foods that help keep our tummies full, like avocados. There are foods that help give us big, strong muscles, like eggs and chicken. And that's kind of how we approach food in our house, as opposed to like healthy versus unhealthy. But I almost wouldn't even have the conversation of like, well, when you have these types of foods, you get fat. And when you have these types of foods, you get skinny. I almost like wouldn't even, I don't know if you feel differently, Josh. I almost like wouldn't even, to me, they're separate. Like I wouldn't want to like, oh, that's a fat food. That's a skinny food. Like I wouldn't want to put that in their head. So I would just keep skinny as like a body description, but also like, do we need to talk about other people's bodies? And food as a separate conversation of different foods do different things for our bodies. And some foods have more nutrients and some foods have less nutrients. I would keep it pretty basic.
Yeah, we like over here, we don't talk about skinny, fat, overweight. Like this is so bad for you. We're in a little bit different situation because I obviously have had gut issues for a long time. My son is kind of following in those footsteps. Like he does have a sensitive tummy. So a lot of times if he's asking, can I have something that's in this quote unquote not healthy food category, we just talk about balance and we talk about moderation. So it's like, all right, well, we had this yesterday, buddy, or we already had a little something today, buddy. And you know how sometimes your stomach doesn't feel good? Well, these are the things that can potentially irritate that and like make that happen. So we're going to focus on some of these foods. Again, give us energy, make us strong, help our brains and all these different things. And we could talk about blueberries, or we can keep it macro based as far as what those things do. But it's always like, what are the things? It's almost like positive or neutral. Like the positive things we want as much as we can. The neutral quote unquote things that we want to moderate it's just that conversation that I've been able to have and put that spin on it. Like this isn't bad. It just has the potential. Like if we have too much of this, it could give you a bellyache again. We don't want to do that. And he actually correlates that himself. Like a lot of times he'll have one too many cookies at Easter or whatever the occasion is, or a birthday party. And first of all, like he'll stop before that. But even when he does have that gets to that point, he's like, yeah, I had too much, and I think I need to have a little bit less of this, and go back over to the fruits and veggies and the proteins and things along those lines. So I've been able to take that different route because of things that we are dealing with on a slightly different level. So you can kind of take that approach,
Yeah.
but
I think
generally like
everyone's,
positive versus neutral, I would say, for moderation.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to think of it, like speaking about it positively or neutral. I think that every parent is going to kind of bring a little bit of their own bias to this. Like you have the bias toward the stomach issues. I have the bias toward like eating disorder in relationship with food stuff. So like I'm hyper aware on that side of like calling something bad or calling something, fattening or something like that. So I would say think about what feels best for you, and what feels most appropriate for the relationship with food and body image that you want your child to have.
Yeah, definitely agree as far as fattening and completely removing that verbiage. It shouldn't even be on the table, especially if you guys are taking the lead on this and
I would
guiding
also
them.
totally be grilling my kid, like, where did you hear that term? Because if it's the teacher, I'm having a conversation with the teacher personally.
Sloan sitting in the interrogation chair. I can see it now.
Be like, so who called you skinny today, honey? Who said you shouldn't eat what was in your lunchbox today?
Brent, good
Or who
cut back
said,
up.
like, because I mean, and this comes down to like, let's not comment on other people's body or other people's food, because I know like there have been things that she'll come home and be like, oh, so and so said, I had a healthy lunch today, and I'm like, okay, is that so bad that like like, I'm not mad that someone said that, but if I found out that someone was like, oh, well, that's why you're skinny, Sloan, because you had salad in your lunchbox, I'd be like, why are you putting that in a 3-year-old's head? Like, what are we doing there? So that's where I'm like, maybe we'd have a conversation. And I mean, I'm on a different level. I'd be like, hey, can I come in and educate the kids on nutrition for kids and the teachers, and we can make a whole, like, I'll host an assembly and I'll teach the whole school. That's kind of how that would be my approach. I don't mean it in like, I'm going to sit down with that teacher and yell at the teacher, but like a lot of times it's just a gap in education. And a lot of adults don't know how to have these conversations. So how could we expect our kids, teachers, et cetera, to know the lay of the land? Like, there's no rules here. A lot of it is preference and what you're comfortable with. So
Agreed. Jess asks, ideas for quick on the go protein breakfasts. I work early days starting around 5 a.m. and am based out of my car, not in an office. I'm struggling to think of easy, portable breakfasts that aren't just fruit or carbs. Thanks. One thing that I love that could be super if you have like a little lunchbox or whatever. It's like my go-to in between meal. Just plain Greek yogurt. I've been doing the 7 Sundays granola, which is awesome. And then I'll throw a little dollop of the granola butter, like whether it's the cookie dough or the original or vanilla. It's like so good. And then we'll do the macadamia nuts and usually some extra blueberries. So I know you said you're tired of just eating fruit and carbs, but all of that together is a solid balance, high protein, significant fats, depending on how many nuts you're throwing in there, and then the granola, the 7 Sundays granola. But little things like that. Obviously, the protein shake is another easy go-to. So
yeah, I was gonna say
that
like a
would be 2
smoothie.
quick meals. Yep, smoothie.
Yep, smoothie. Throw some whey protein in there, some collagen, some creatine. Add your fats like chia seeds, or it could be peanut butter or whatever else. Get your protein in there. Throw your frozen fruit in there. Brant will put oats in his just for extra carbs, extra fiber, extra calories. The nice thing about a smoothie is you can really just make it as caloric as you want it to be. You could make 1,000-calorie smoothie, or you can make a 300-calorie smoothie. Another thing that I see people do a lot, and I can't speak to doing this myself, but there are some girls that I follow who do this, and it actually looks really good.
The blended chicken and water and drink it.
I've seen people prep like breakfast burritos. Like they'll like scramble the eggs and mix it with like maybe onion and peppers and sausage or spinach and cheese or whatever, roll them up in the tortillas, and then they stick them in the freezer. And then they'll just kind of like grab and go. They thaw, and you could take that with you. Or like take it out of the freezer, stick it in the toaster oven for, a few minutes to warm it up, and you take that with you. So maybe meal prepping, if you're not just wanting like straight fruit and protein, you kind of want the savory route of like eggs. Like I've seen people prep like egg bites or like egg muffins kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Could you prep an egg sandwich on like an English muffin? And again, you can kind of like prep these and freeze these and then just pull them as you need them. So that you're not necessarily needing to make one fresh every morning. But I would say like a breakfast burrito, breakfast tacos, something that's just easy to bring with you in the car. Tacos might be a little more difficult, but I feel like
I love
a breakfast
tacos.
burrito you could just kind of like hold and munch on. So
Good. I always struggle with the protein falling. I can never wrap a full, like I have to have like 5 tacos or like 2 giant burritos if I'm doing eggs or something like that,
everything's
because
just falling out.
if I'm doing 5 eggs, like
You
that's
can't get
2 or
enough
3.
calories in it. Yeah.
Yes.
In one
Yep.
thing.
That's my
Yeah.
struggle. Katie says, I think this happened in college when I became a college athlete and actually started lifting heavy. I have stretch marks in the back of my arms. They become more prominent when I lift heavy arms. I want to keep lifting heavy to get that toned arm look, but I get self-conscious that I'm creating more stretch marks. Is there a way to prevent stretch marks from lifting? Is there a way to reduce them? Or maybe I just need to embrace them, be okay that I have them, and or grow them. She follows up with, I had the same, oh no, it was... Oh,
It's
sorry,
a
that was
different
Hannah.
comment
That was
on the
Hannah.
thread saying same problem. She used
Okay.
beef tallow. So one, we're not really gonna get rid of stretch marks. Like typically a stretch mark is happening. Yes, there's a genetic component. I saw someone say, typically we're having stretch marks when we're seeing a lot of growth in a small amount of time. So like when the body's not having a ton of time to stretch, prime example, we'll see people get stretch marks with pregnancy, where the belly is growing kind of rapidly. And people might, get stretch marks on their belly or their boobs, wherever else. So I would say if you are, you've already experienced having stretch marks before, I don't think that you're necessarily going to get rid of them. But in a sense, I think you can I feel like you could fill them out if that makes sense. Like I think of people who have maybe previously been very overweight and then they lost a ton of weight and they might have some stretch marks, but now they start lifting and they're like filling what's under their skin with more muscle, then those stretch marks can kind of become less prominent. But I don't think that there is a cream or something that you can put on a stretch mark to go away. I know there are some other practices like microneedling or some other skincare procedures that you might be able to lighten them or mitigate them. I'm not super well versed in that aspect, but what are your thoughts, Josh?
Yeah, I have them. People always mention shea butter. I think at the point that I started using that, then it didn't really matter. I had already had them.
I think
They,
it's you're more likely to prevent them with something
right,
like like people during pregnancy they'll put on like a belly butter or a shea butter or something to help prevent it by keeping
right.
that area super moisturized. But once they're there, it
They're
might
your
be.
battle scars. They're,
Yep.
it's the accomplishment. You got big. I got mine on my route to 227, and can't say I
Brant's
loved
got 'em.
having them. What's
Yeah,
that?
Brant has them like in his like biceps, like
Yeah,
bicep, like pec.
through the across the shoulder into the
Yep,
pec. Yeah,
yep,
got
yep.
there.
That's where Brant's are.
Yep. So, I mean, most people have them, especially if you're an athlete. I would embrace them if you want to get rid of them. Like Joel said, there's a couple procedures that you could look into, like the aesthetic. I don't know what the aesthetic salon things are called. Basically, where you go get Botox. They typically offer those.
Yeah, some sort of med spa.
Yeah. Last one, I believe I'll skim through because I know Alessandra's a little bit out of order compared to mine, but she did bring this up before, and we had no idea what she was talking
Oh
about.
yeah.
Thoughts on the Katie Max controversy? I keep seeing a lot of female runners posting about how running is political after Kate posted a video interviewing the White House press secretary. I don't get why people need to turn everything political. Curious to hear your thoughts on this. No idea
We
what
have
this
no clue.
controversy is.
Kate
Anytime you see
Matches.
fitness or anything like life related just turned into a political controversy, just call BS. Like it's so fucking dumb. If somebody's trying to spin it that way, obviously running is not political. Whether you run, whether you
Fitness
don't
is
run,
not
I think
political. Health
Joel,
is
you were
not
joking
political.
before. Yeah, you were joking before. Like every bodybuilder was tagged into the MAGA camp for
Right.
a while or whatever that deal was. So like, call it what you want. If someone is tagging you into a specific political party or some type of political call out, that is entirely based on their shortcomings and the crazy things they got going on that they're projecting out onto everyone else, looking for someone to hate. So
We we have this societal need to put people in a box that they did not ask to be put in.
get me
And
out of here.
I mean, I literally made a reel this morning about like I love all the science and all the research and like I had unmedicated births, I had a home birth. Like there are some granola sides of me, and then there are also some really like research heavy science sides of me that like give me all the data, give me all the research, and then there are like the crunchy sides of me, and you can give me all the science, but like I'm still gonna get my Botox, like. I won't get an epidural, but I'll get Botox. Does that make any sense? Like you've probably put me in one camp based on one of those things. And then I just throw the duality at you like, ha, just when you think I zig, I zag.
You thought you knew me.
Yeah. Stop trying to put people in boxes. Stop trying to make everything political.
Worry about yourself. Trying to
What
make
about
this world a
yourself?
happy, healthy place. Do your part. Play the ripples. Every little thing you do, holding the door, a little smile, a little wave. That's where it
Yep.
all stems from.
Make
So
the world a better place.
make the world a better place. How
Our
would you
kids
want someone
deserve.
talking to your kid? Exactly.
Yeah.
We're
Our
doing this
kids
for our
deserve
kids.
it.
How would you want someone talking to your kids, to your parents? I think people really need that message. It's not me versus you, us versus them. Like we're all on the same team. Like
Yeah.
we're gonna fuck this planet up together, or we're gonna rise back up together. And it's
Brief side note. I remember when I was first pregnant with Sloan, someone messaged me and said, aren't you so worried about raising babies in this world? And my immediate thought was the world needs more of the type of babies I'm going to raise.
Mm-hmm.
So no, I'm not, because I'm going to raise good people.
I tell our kids every day, you're going to have to save the world. It's going to be up to you. So we'll do everything we can to get them ready for that. But Wes has an appointment. I have to go move my truck. So we're going to wrap it up here. I just skimmed through. That was all the questions that we just got submitted. Last little bit is we do have a 3-episode rule. So if you're listening beyond 3 episodes, we simply ask that you leave a quick 5-star review. You can tag us on social media, share it with your friends, send it through a text, whatever the deal is. Our goal here is to provide a free resource to those who are not working with us, who are not using our app, who can't afford it or just aren't ready for it for whatever reason. This is the thing we direct them towards to give you guys actionable steps. So if you have listened beyond 3 episodes, the reason for that rule is you've probably gotten some value. You're still here. You're still listening. We want you to share that message. Pay it forward. Someone else can probably get something out of this that they can take home and start applying today to make a better life for themselves, for their families, for our humanitarian family. That's how we're going to change the world. Through awareness, we create change. That's your part as the listener if you are beyond those 3 episodes. So we appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for being here. Where can they find you?
At Joelle Samantha.
I'm at Josh Skutnick, and everything else is linked in the show notes.